All right, we're going to talk about whirls. And I need my handy dandy little black book for this because I had to write a bunch of this down. So whirls, for anybody that doesn't know what I'm talking about there, that's the cowlicks that horses have in their hair. It's where the hair comes together, and there's tight little swirls where the hair is going the wrong direction. Almost every horse, not every horse, but almost every horse has got one in the middle of their head somewhere. And a lot of times those are the only ones anybody notices. So there's a whole, and it's called whirlology. It's the study of whirls. And it's kind of a pseudoscience in some ways. But it's something that older horsemen talked about a bunch when I was a kid and pointed things out and this and that about the different whirls and about what it all meant. And they told me a lot of what it meant. And as a kid, it seemed a little witchcrafty to me. It wasn't something I was interested in. And in fact, I purposely ignored whirls for a long, long time. Just kind of because I wasn't buying it. Later on in life, I learned that the hair on a foal develops at the same time that the brain does in vitro. And that kind of got me to thinking that's interesting. There maybe could be something to these whirls, these cowlicks. And then I learned specifically that certain whirls, especially the ones on the front of their face, develop at the same time that certain parts of their brain develop. Specifically well, I can't remember. Hopefully I wrote it in my notes. But specifically the parts of the brain that deals with emotions and how they handle stress and things like that. So like I said, what I've done here, when I started kind of thinking, well, maybe there was something to those whirls, that's, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago. And I've always taken notes on the horses I'm riding and tried to write down little strange things and just do a lot of observational science. For instance, that's when you guys will kind of think you're crazy, but every sorrel filly with a white chin that I've ever been around has been absurdly tough to start. Does that? Not a white lip, but a white chin. So little things like that I've taken note of over the course of my life. And so I had to go back through my notes. I had to remember some of the things that old guys told me. I did a lot of research on the internet about things that other people talked about. And I've found that a lot of these things, over the years, really darn sure have some correlation. None of these necessarily, I'm going to say, if a horse has this, don't buy him. Don't try him. Pass him by. Personally, if I come across a horse that's got a lot of strange whirls all over their body, I've found that I don't want anything to do with horses like that. But these are little things you can start to look at, and these are things, they don't necessarily change whether or not I will or won't buy a horse, but they're things that I do look for in a horse that I like. And we're going to do this. This is going to be a little kind of a two-part thing, or maybe we'll run it together or whatever. But I'll show you some of the whirls on my show horse and her foal, and we'll kind of talk about that. But I'm just going to go right off my list here. So the forehead is the really important whirls that we look at. Those are the first ones we see. A lot of horses only have whirls on their forehead. They don't have them in a lot of other places in their body. And they're the ones we focus on. And that hair on their forehead develops at the exact same time that their brain starts developing. And it's made out of the same embryonic stuff, whatever that is. That's some kind of biological stuff I don't understand, but it's made out of the same stuff. So the whirl right between their eyes. Almost all horses have a whirl right between their eyes. So if it's directly between their eyes, right square in the middle, yeah, that's not between my eyes, is it? That's between my eyes. If it's directly between their eyes, right square in the middle, that's real normal. That's a atypical, normal kind of horse, and not an atypical. That's the wrong language there. Oh, really? Well, I'm an idiot. Okay, so that's just a normal run-of-the-mill horse. If it's directly between the eyes, and it's real even. That kind of horse is going to behave, I guess stereotypical was maybe more what I was looking for, is going to behave in all the stereotypical manners that we expect a horse to behave, barring some man-made mess ups or this or that. That horse is going to be level. The regular training methods are going to work. That's what we're looking for. That's what we're looking for in most horses, is for it to be right between their eyes, a small, tight whirl right between their eyes. Check these off as I go, or else I'll get it in a mess here. If that whirl is higher up, it's still in the middle, but it's higher up. That horse is often going to be a lot more sensitive. It's going to have more action in its brain. It's going to be a horse that's firing on 9 cylinders instead of 8. It's going to be one of those ones whose ears are always moving around, that doesn't miss anything. It's that horse that sees stuff happening all the time. Not necessarily in a bad way, but it's going to be a horse that's a lot more active. Not necessarily a quiet horse. And then, of course, it's the opposite. The horse with a whirl that's lower down between their eyes, then that horse is going to be duller, quieter, probably harder to train, but not because he's trying to jump out from under you. It's because you can poke and poke and poke with that spur, and he's like, and kind of gets turned around there. Equines are equines. I know donkeys and horses are different, but equines are equines. Look at a donkey. They never have a whirl between their eyes or above their eyes. All their whirls are way low, all the way down their muzzle. And I'm sure there's an exception to that rule because I said all of them. But, donkeys are known to be quiet, easygoing. They're kind of hard-headed. Okay, well, that's what you're going to get with those lower whirls, kind of more of a donkey mentality. And then off to either side, cross that off so you don't talk about that anymore. Off to either side, to the left or right, it's not square in the middle, but it's off to either side a little bit. That horse is just going to be left side dominant, right side dominant. Either way, whichever side it's on, that horse is going to be more dominant on that side. So ideally, like in any of the performance deals, we really don't want a horse to have that whirl off to the right-hand side, because if they're going to be right-hand dominant, that's really, well, I guess in anything, not even just the performance disciplines, that's really going to throw us off, because we all go to the horse on the left-hand side and we saddle him from the left-hand side. Even in driving and things like that, we do so much from the left. If that whirl's way over to the right, it just makes things a little tougher. These tighter whirls, if that hair is tighter and smaller, you'll find that horse has a lot more focus. When it's a bigger whirl, like, got my pen in my hand, you don't see them that big very often, but if you see a big one that's kind of loose and the hair kind of poofs out everywhere, those are going to be kind of scatterbrained horses that can't really focus on things, kind of a squirrel kind of a horse. Those real small tight ones are the ones that you're going to find those horses have real laser focus on whatever their thing is, whether it's cow horse, jumping horse, running horse, blah blah blah. They're going to be able to really focus on what they're doing. Loose whirls are less focused. Usually a single whirl is a really consistent personality. When you've just got one, that's a real consistent personality. So and whatever the personality is, whether it's good or bad, whether that horse is a Mexican bandito that'll pull a knife on you, he's always going to be a Mexican bandito that'll pull a knife on you. If it's just a easygoing, chilled out, kind of a cool horse, he's pretty well always going to be easygoing, chilled out, kind of a cool horse. Again, this is barring like nuclear disaster. The single world horse is still going to be an idiot. So am I. So I don't care. But that's just, this is a generality. Generality. The multiple world horses, they seem to be inconsistent. They'll be confident, unconfident, super confident, take on the world. Oh my God, that scares me. Throw my tail in there and run. They'll swap back and forth. And you talk to a lot of people that really get into this whirl stuff, and they'll say, oh, they're split personality. No, it's not so much. I don't want to say that they're split personality, but they're not real consistent in how they deal with the world. One shadow really bugs them, and another shadow they don't care about at all. They also seem to be rather picky eaters, I've found. They're also really picky about the different material that touches them. Those double world horses are just high maintenance, is more what I would say than split personality. But you hear some people say they're split personality. Yeah, and like I said, they'll be totally unreasonable about some things that we don't necessarily see. Those double world horses, they'll just, no, I've got in every other trailer you've ever brought me to, but this trailer I'm not getting into. Now, obviously, they're seeing something that we're not, but it's those single world horses go, oh yeah, that's different. Whatever, dog. And those double world horses seem to go, no, it's red. Well, they don't see red. Whatever. So that's double whirls. Those double whirls usually either come stacked side by side or in a Z pattern. So they're either doot doot like that, they're side by side like that, or that Z pattern. It's not so much a Z pattern, it's more just diagonal like that. And those seem to have some differences too. The really tight side by side ones they're hyper focused. They're really challenging. They're really hard to train. They're the ones that make trainers stay up at night trying to figure out how to get this sucker to do it just the way they want them to. But once you do figure them out and get them to do it the way, then they're like that every time. They're really gritty. They're the type of horses that when something's off and you take them in and you get them vetted and you're like, holy smokes, there is bone on bone. We really needed to inject this horse a long time ago, but he just never told us about it. They're the kind of horses that, yeah, they're the kind of horses that end up being called tough. Old tough nut. They're the kind of horses that drink any water, eat any food. You know, they're war horses. They really are. And a lot of the really high performance champions in like every discipline have those tight double whirls, side by side double whirls. Race horses, jumping horses, cutting horses. And that's no, and they're not real high. They're almost always even. They're almost always directly between the two eyes. They're not high. They're not low. They're almost always directly between their two eyes. They're tight side by side. But that's one of the things where you go, oh yeah, whirls, sure. And then you look at the performance world and you go, winner. There's so many of them that have them. Not to say that there's not winners that don't have them, but there's lots of winners that do have them. And so that's one of the things to think about there. The double whirls that are stacked, they're tough mentally and physically. They're physically tough. They're horses that can take a lot of training, can take a lot of abuse. They don't break down, but they're also generally kind of knotheads. They're the kind of horses they don't want to be petted. They don't want to be loved on. They want to be caught. They want to be put to work. It's a little hard for them to figure out what their job is, but once they do it, they're real good and consistent at it. But they're mentally really tough. It's if you ever do get a bad habit on them, it's really hard to get them out of that bad habit. whether that's pulling back or whether that's breaking down for a lead change instead of doing a flying lead change. Once they've learned to do a simple lead change with those up and down double whirls, it's like next to impossible to get them to do a flying lead change. Kind of things like that. And they really don't work all that great under pressure. They're the kind of horses, those stacked double whirls, don't really do great under pressure. They take high pressure situations and tend to want to panic, or they tend to want to overwork and just wreck everything because they're just trying so hard to do it. They can really be tough to get around. They're also, like I said, they tend to come unraveled about things. They get totally unreasonable about certain things. They're the kind of horses that all head horses get hot in the box. It's just what head horses do. The ones with stacked double whirls are the ones that end up flipping over in the box because they just can't take that pressure and they just get unreasonably silly about it. You'll see a lot of those stereotypical crazy barrel racer barrel horses. Nothing against you barrel racers, but you guys know who I'm talking about. You'll see some of those stereotypical crazy barrel racer barrel horses. They'll have those stacked double whirls. Those horses just get unreasonable and they just get panicked about it. They also, and this is a personal observation, those stacked double whirls tend to be really accident prone. Those are the kind of horses that they're always barked up. They're always dinged up. They're the ones that get cast all the time. Those are ones that they're consistently getting themselves in a wreck somehow or another. And they're also the ones that when it really matters, when it comes down to the wire, to me, this is also personal observation. They're the ones that let you down. And with that said, before I go on, a ton of this is personal observation, and so take all of this with a grain of salt, because there's obviously some bias and some prejudice involved here. Horses that have let me down. Later I realized, oh, you got a double whirl. I'm taking note of that, you double whirled son of a guns. But I'm only bringing this up. I'm doing this whole whirl thing just to bring it to light. Just you guys start looking and start seeing what you think about it. So let me see where else I'm at. The Z pattern or the diagonal pattern. They're usually bad-minded. They're almost always bad-minded. They're grumpy. They're really protective of their space. They're the kind of horse in a stall that bites at other horses or pins their ears at other horses when you lead them by. They're the kind of horses that pin their ears and show their teeth at you when you go to feed them and you got to bop them in the eye. That's just the kind of horses they are. They're bad-minded and they're grumpy. They really aren't very submissive. They'd rather fight you than submit. In order to train them, you really got to make things their idea. They don't want to come to the party. I mean, you can train them. You darn sure can train them. And they make a horse. They make really well for like really singular things where they just have one job, like a steer dogging horse. All I do is break out of here fast and run past that steer. That's my job. You'll see a bunch of those have that diagonal double whirl on them. They're not good for anything else, but they're great steer dogging horses. Things like that. They can be trained, but they're really tough. And they're the kind of horse you don't ever want to get in a fight with, because they will fight you. They're not gonna submit. You're not gonna get them tired enough that they give in. You're not gonna be able to kick hard enough or pull hard enough that they give in. You're not gonna be able to out tough them. You got to outthink them. And they seem to usually have a really high pain tolerance. They're the kind of horses that never come up lame. And if you x-ray them, you go, my God, how are you still getting up in the morning? So evidently, actually now that I'm talking about diagonal double whirls. I think I'm a diagonal double whirled kind of a guy, personally. I'm talking about myself here. I'm really protective and grumpy and bad-minded. And I'll fight you for anything, and I never give up, ever. And I have a high pain tolerance. They probably also have a high tolerance to alcohol. Anyway, so yeah, they don't really, they're the kind of horses that don't ever show you they're hurting. Those multiple whirled horses are always less tolerant. They're not very forgiving. They're not the kind of horse you want for a beginner. And that's people that are learning to ride need those tight single whirled horses that are right between their eyes, because those horses are calm. They stay the course. They're the kind to learn on. Again, all of this is being said. We're assuming that there's no man-made tragedies in their life. Whirls around their mouth.